Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the March Utah Water Supply Briefing. I'm Patrick Cormus from the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center, and I'll be presenting today. I'll be presenting forecasts from Trevor Grout and Brenda Alcorn as well. As always, it's a pretty small group here today, so feel free to interrupt with questions, type questions in the questions box, or raise your hand. Brenda's going to be monitoring questions, so if you have a really hard one, you can type it in there at any time and she can answer it for you. This webinar is going to be recorded, and the recording and slides will be on our webpage later today after we're done here. So welcome again, and thanks for attending. So today we'll cover water supply forecasts and weather conditions for the Bear, Weber, Six Creeks, Provo, Duchesne, Sevier, and Virgin River basins. We'll start off talking about weather and snowpack, get right into the water supply forecasts for April through July volumes, and then talk about upcoming weather, and we can end with some questions. All right, so for February, we saw near normal precipitation. On the left here, we see a bar chart. There's a group of bars for each forecast group, and I've colored in February precipitation in green. So the axis is percent of average, and I've highlighted 100% of average or normal with that dotted blue line, dotted blue horizontal line. So we see near normal February percent of normal precipitation for the month of February. And in particular, the Bear, Six Creeks, and Virgin saw 130% of normal precipitation for February. That center plot there is percent of average water year precipitation, so October through the end of February. You can see well over normal water year precipitation across all basins, and above 120% pretty much for all of these basins. On the right, it's just a tabular form of that, so you can pick out your favorite basin and see where we were for percent of average February precipitation and water year precipitation. February didn't start out that good, as you all probably are aware. So that leftmost map here is a picture of percent of average precipitation for February 15th. So in the middle of the month, most of the basin here saw 30% or lower of average February precipitation up to mid-month. And even up to the 21st here, this middle map, you can see that the basins are lagging very far behind for February precipitation. So this was up to the 21st, and then you can see this series of figures of maps here showing daily precipitation starting on the 22nd and going through the 25th. So we had a large storm system come through Utah for a few days there, and it really brought us up to what we saw on the last page there. So on the left here is the map view of February precipitation and percent of average. I'd like to point out a couple of things here. The first one is that the Bear River Range did really well in that last storm and ended up between 130 to almost 200% of normal up there. Same thing for the Virgin River Basin and Hatch, Sevier at Hatch. Places that really lag behind in February are the western edge of the Uintas, which is the headwaters for the Weber, the Bear, and the Provo river systems. So they did not get as much precipitation as they normally do in February. This center map here is the water year precipitation, percent of average. And as you can see, there's a couple of things also to point out. Although it's all above average, which is great, there's a couple of places that are lagging behind the rest of the area. One of them is the Smiths Fork here. And a few years ago, that was kind of the breadwinner for the Bear. The Uintas, like that western section of the Uintas that I was talking about, is above normal, and that's great, but usually that's very high percent of average area. And then you can see this band here from the Bear River Range all the way through the Wasatch front and down that's much above normal, so 130% to 150% of normal areas there, as well as Sevier hatch headwaters in the Virgin and the Santa Clara down here, very high for the water year average. So maybe not a typical distribution of precipitation, but we'll see a very good one nonetheless. Okay, as for temperature, sorry, this should say temperature at the top. Our maximum temperatures for February were much below normal, which has helped us retain a lot of that precipitation as snow, and we didn't see much snowpack melting. Temperature being our surrogate for the energy balance here in the model. And then even minimum temperatures, well, with more of a mixed bag, we saw normals, a lot of area in normal minimum temperatures, and a lot of the area in below normal temperatures, with just a few kind of outstanding 1 to 3 degrees above normal. Okay, this information has led to our current snowpack. This is as of March 5th. On the left there, you can see all those boxes have a percent of median for these snowtail sites. So each of these boxes is a snowtail site, color-coded by percent of median for that day. So you can see most of them well above median values for this time of year. And once again, you can see that the Smiths Fork area here above normal, but not as much above normal as the rest of the basins that we're seeing. The center map here is on top of that, we've imposed the superimposed the model SWE for significant areas from our model here at the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center. And once again, the only place that really sticks out is a little bit below that 130% of normal, or 110 to 130% of normal, is the Smiths Fork, or the Smiths Fork and the Bear. On the right there is just a tabulated version of those maps there showing percent of median for our forecast group. So forecast group by forecast group, kind of the average snowpack condition in our model. All right, and to further hit this home, it's been a really good water year as in terms of snowpack. These are maximum ranks from snowtails within the area that we're talking about here. So you can see lots of ones, which would be the highest snowpack on record at those sites. Ones, twos, threes, fours, and fives here in the Six Creeks area. And up in the Smiths Fork section there, you can see some 12s and 15s. So nothing to shake a stick at, but still a little bit lower than the rest of the area. Okay, and with that, we'll jump right into water supply forecasts. This is the March 1st official forecasts for April through July volumes. And these forecast groups, our April through July forecasts, will be presented mostly in percent of averages, and that average is the 1991 to 2020 average. So here in the table, we're presenting the median forecast by group. So median forecast for Bear is 115% of that 1991 to 2020 average, and so on and so forth. So you can see Six Creeks really high at 165, Sevier 160% of normal for that median forecast, and Virgin 175% of average for that median forecast. So here's a quick plot of how the forecasts have evolved over time. These are directly off of our official web forecast publication. So the Great Basin is kind of all lumped together in one forecast pub. So you can see the Bear and the Weber kind of median forecasts have essentially stayed the same or inched up slightly from January. And the rest of them, Six Creeks, Utah, Lake and Provo, Duchesne, Sevier, and Virgin, have steadily increased over time. From January in blue, February in red, and March 1st forecasts in green. So let's start going through forecast group by forecast group, give you an idea what's going on. We'll start with the Bear River Basin. On the left here, you're seeing percent change from our February 1st forecast. So this is a percent volume change from February 1 to March 1st official forecast. You can see we had small declines in the Smiths Fork, and coming out of the Uintas, 7% drop in the Bear headwaters, but big increases in Blacksmith Fork and the Little Bear and even the Logan River kind of make up for that. On the right here, we just see percent of normal for all the basins that we do forecasts for. So even though there were drops in Smiths Fork and Barrett State Line, we're still above average for that median forecast or most probable forecast. Stewart Dam, a regulated forecast, we're expecting 114% of that average April through July volume, 1991 to 2020 average. And then Logan River at 120%, and then the Blacksmith Fork and Little Bear above 150% of average. Okay, while keeping the right map there the same, we'll look at the forecast group, the Bear River Basin forecast group modeled snow. So this is a graphic we've been developing over the past few months. The blue line has the median forecast group, SWE. I put 2022 on there last year so we can see what that looked like. And in black is the 2023 basin average snowpack. So you can see well above normal. As of March 5th, we were 151% of the daily median value in the Bear River Basin. And those are all the significant contributing areas in the Bear River Basin kind of stacked up. So you can compare them. Here, once again, from the official forecast pub, we got a bar chart that just kind of summarizes basin conditions. So very similar to what we just went over. We've got precipitation and snow water equivalent, percent of average and median for snow. Our forecasts as of March 1st were 115%. That's the median value. And in addition to that, we've got the stream flow observations for the month and reservoir contents, which I don't normally present here, but can be interesting nonetheless. Special note on the reservoir contents, this is percent of usable capacity, not a percent of average contents, but a quick way to look at basin conditions with a quick bar chart here. Okay, let's look at some specific forecasts here. Since we've been talking about it, we'll look at the Smiths Fork compared to Little Bear, one of our lower forecasts to one of our higher forecasts here. You can see that the median forecast, or that center pink dot, the most probable forecast, has stayed the same at 94,000 acre feet for January 1st, February 1st, and dropped slightly to 91,000 acre feet, which is our most probable forecast for April through July volume. These evolution plots kind of evolve over time with model states. So if you have above precipitation for some period of time, you should see the blue line, which is the most probable forecast from model guidance. So we run our model every day, and that blue line is updated every day. If we have above average precipitation during that time period, the model guidance should increase with that, with those model states increasing. So either snow water equivalent in those basins will be increasing, or we have soil moisture states as well in the model. So those should reflect, the median forecast should reflect a combination of model states and future average weather. Along with that, the future weather variability decreases with time. So you can see that our 10% exceedance value kind of drops over time from January at 125,000 acre feet to 115,000 acre feet. So that would be kind of a wet scenario. If all of our future weather between here and the end of July is wet, we can expect something around the 115,000 acre foot volume. And the bottom has kind of come up here. We went from 58,000 acre feet as a 90% exceedance value to 73,000 acre feet is the exceedance value here. So, you know, through time, you can see how the model states change with that most probable forecast. And you should be able to see our uncertainty values get narrower as future weather variability decreases. Okay, Little Bear Paradise, wanted to point out here between February 1st and March 1st forecasts, you can see since we had below average precipitation here for the first part of February, you can see that the model guidance dropped between the 1st and the 22nd here. And then with those big storms starting on the 22nd through March 1st, you can see the model guidance increased to our most recent official forecast, which was 61,000 acre feet, or 156% of average, 218% of median. To support that, down here in the map, I'm showing the Little Bear Paradise map here, so you can see the local area, and then above Porcupine Reservoir here, I pulled out the 3 snowtail sites that we use to characterize precipitation that goes into here. And you can see that there was increases from February 28th or 22nd to the 28th. So Monte Cristo increased 12% of daily average, Dry Bread Pond up 15.5% during that time period, and Little Bear increased a whopping 44% of daily average. So if we would have just got average precipitation at those snowtail sites, this would be 0%. So these percentages are an increase over what we would normally get during that time period. All right, another note, if you really like to dig into that kind of stuff that we just talked about, we do have model snow plots on our website that you can get to. You can make these plots as messy as you want to. You can include the different model zones on the plot. You can include the basin snowtails or the snowtails that inform the model precipitation. And then you can add any model that you want to. You can compare it to different water years over here. You can add mins and maxes, medians, and you can change this y-axis here to percent seasonal median, which are the numbers that I'm reporting to the map to the right, or that's a percent daily median, or you can do it as a percent seasonal median, which will do a percent of kind of the normal peak in the modeled SWE or snowtail SWE. So anyways, lots of ways you can dig into the model SWE or basin SWEs. Okay, moving on to the Weber River Basin on the left here, once again, looking at the change from February 1st to March 1st. You can see once again that our basins coming out of the western Uintas have dropped a little bit. So 7% drop in Weber Oakley, Rockport, and Weber at Colville, but a large increase in Lost Creek and the Ogden River Basin, as well as East Canyon. So you can see Gateway River Basin that kind of incorporates Chalk Creek, East Canyon, and the Weber coming out of the Uintas saw a 5% increase over last month. Pineview in the Ogden River Basin there up 16% from last year. And on the right here, again, we can see percent of average forecasts for those April through July volumes in terms of 91 to 2020 volumes. Weber Oakley, although it dropped, is still slightly above average for our forecasts for April through July volumes. And then if you look up here at the Ogden, we're at 160% of average for the Pineview River Basin. East Canyon, a big winner here at 174% of average. Okay, once again, looking at the forecast group snow water equivalent plot here. Light blue here is the median snow water equivalent trace for that forecast group. As of March 5th, we're 170% of median. So within those 5 days, we kind of jumped up from that 165 to 170% of median value. In that snapshot, you can see that February precipitation above normal, water year precipitation above normal, snow water equivalent above normal, forecasts above normal. observed stream flow below normal, but that's probably because we're holding on to a lot of the snow, instead of melting it and producing runoff already. And reservoir contents, 55% of usable contents. So once again, just an easy way to click on a graph and get a basin-wide view of what's happening in that basin as of end of February, March 1st. All right, once again, looking at an evolution plot coming out of the Uintas. So this is the Weber at Oakley, and you can see that our most probable forecast has dropped from January 1st forecast of 133,000 acre feet down to 124,000 acre feet in February. And then our most recent, most probable forecast is 115% of average, or 115,000 acre feet, 104% of average. These lower percentiles are exceedance values. So we have a 90% exceedance value of getting above our median value, 30-year median value, a 70% chance of exceeding, 70% chance of being below normal. What do I want to say here? Our exceedance value for the 70% is still below normal. So 50% of our traces fall above that normal line. 70% of those traces are above the median line, and 10% of those exceedance values are below the median value down here. So just a way that you can use this spread and confidence and certainty values to plan on what volumes you're going to see in that April through July period. Okay, here's an example from the Ogden Pine View Reservoir down here on the bottom. You can see that this one gets mid-month updates, so there's a pink kind of dot in between these official forecasts on the first of months. And you can see a steady increase from our January 1st through March 1st official forecast here. So our March 1st official forecast is 172,000 acre feet, or 158% of average. And if you want to see what these latest storms have done since March 1st, you can follow this blue line up, and we're already over 190,000 acre feet with the model guidance here. All right, and over to the right is just the Utah map of February precipitation, once again highlighting the below normal precipitation in those Uinta headwaters and the above average precipitation that we see here in the Ogden headwaters. All right, into the Six Creeks. Once again, graph on the left is the change in forecast percent from February 1st to March 1st. So you can see the Little Cottonwoods and City Creek and Red Butte all bumping up 4% for the March 1st forecast. Large increases in the Parley system, with Little Dell going up 13%, Lambs up 10%, and Parley's Creek up 17%. Mill Creek almost gaining 10% as well. On the right here, official forecast, the Cottonwoods at 150 and 140% of average for that April through July volume. Parley system bumped up to 200% of average. City Creek at 130% of average here. So looking to be a very good runoff season in the Six Creeks area. Six Creeks Basin, SWE here at 176% of median as of March 1st. Quite the stark contrast to 2022 here in the green, which was well below median at this time of the year. Basin snapshot right here, we saw 85% of normal February stream flow, reservoir contents, 65% of normal capacity. Okay, on to the Provo, Utah Lake Basin. Familiar story here. The Provo headwaters here dropped 2.5 to 3% between February 1st and March 1st. However, we had the American Fork and Spanish Fork bumping up 7.5% and 9%. Salt Creek up 8%. That percent of normal is based on 1994 to 2020, so we're losing a few of the early 90 years in that calculated average. So on the right here, you can see, even though we're bumping down in that Provo headwaters, we're still at about 125% of normal or average for that April through July volume. Deer Creek, 144%. We've seen some big storms come in and hit the Deer Creek local area that didn't come in and hit the Uinta headwaters. American Fork's up at 172% of average, Spanish Fork at 156% of average, and Utah Lake at 190% of average. So also looking to be a very good runoff year in the Provo, Utah Lake Basin. All right, once again, our snow just bumped up to 200% of median as of March 5th for the whole river basin combined. You know, that's up 10% from the March 1st value at 190% of average or median value there. February stream flow also at 85%, reservoir content 60% of usable contents there. Okay, let's take a closer look at the Provo woodland evolution plot here. We can see that the most probable forecast for January was 116,000 acre feet, bumped up to 122,000 acre feet for February 1st, and then kind of bumped back down to 119,000 acre feet, which is not that bad considering the drop in our ESP daily model guidance before those storms came in was much lower than that. So those recent storms have really helped bump that back up. 119,000 acre feet is 125% of average almost, so not too shabby. Down here looking at Spanish Fork Castilla, we started off with a January forecast of 67,000 acre feet and ended up today with a official forecast of 84,000 acre feet for March 1st. And once again, with these recent storms that we have, you can see the impact on our model guidance. That's up to over 95,000 acre feet now. Once again, on the right here, same map that we looked at several times for February precipitation. You can once again see this kind of dark orange showing below average precipitation in the western Uintas, while we have above average precipitation over here on the Spanish Fork and other basins. Okay, in the Duchesne River Basin, no real declines in water supply forecasts from March 1st. You can see the eastern Uintas did really well with Red Fleet seeing a 9% increase in the water supply forecast. White Rock's at 6% of the water supply forecast, and then kind of dropping over here to Current Creek and Tabiona, staying the same as last year. Starvation seeing a 3% increase, Starvation seeing an 8% increase, and 9% increase when we get all the way down to Randlet. Schofield looking good with an 8% increase over last month's forecast. When we look at the percent of normals over here on the right side, you can see Red Fleet and White Rock's at over about 130% of normal for that April through July volume. It's forecast. Duchesne Randlet also about 130%. Current Creek at 160% of normal, Strawberry 120, Starvation 144. So very healthy water supply forecasts here for the Duchesne. The lower green here, we've got Schofield at 191%, so also looking very good for percent of average forecasts. Okay, once again, looking at the whole basin kind of lumped into one number here. As of March 6th, the whole basin was at 168% of median SWE. And compared to last year where we were below median SWE for that day. Differences here is when we look at a snapshot of basin conditions, February precipitation just slightly below normal. Water year precipitation still really healthy at 125% of normal. February stream flow though in the Duchesne has been really good at 130% of average. Reservoir contents a little bit higher than the rest of the basins we've looked at 75% of usable contents, and our median forecast at 130% of average. Okay, and lastly, the Sevier and Virgin River Basins. Once again, the Sevier River Basin are regulated forecasts, but we can see mostly increases here. We've got a slight decrease in Salina Creek, but Manti Creek at 7% increase, East Fork of the Sevier at Kingston plus 5%, Hatch adds 10% from February 1st to March 1st. Virgin at Virgin, we added 30% to our volume forecasts between February 1st and March 1st due to incredible precipitation amounts down here in snowpack. Santa Clara added 13% for our most probable forecast, February 1st to March 1st. On the right, we can see percent of average for our March 1st forecasts for April through July volumes. So the Virgin at about 180% of average, Santa Clara 170% of average, Salina Creek 153, even though there was a slight drop, still very good high forecasts for April through July volumes in the Sevier. Okay, basin conditions here, kind of the same story. You can see above average February precipitation, water supply, precipitation, and snow water equivalent, and above average forecasts for those forecast groups, below average stream flow volumes coming out of both of these basins here. Looking at the snow percent of median for this day for March 5th in the Sevier, we're 177% of median value for the whole forecast group, and a whopping 240% of median in the Virgin Basin as of March 5th. Okay, so that concludes the water supply forecast summaries for specific river basins. Here's what you can expect for errors from our water supply forecasts. You can see the forecasts are better with lower mean absolute errors in headwater basins, which are primarily snowmelt basins with known diversions and demands. We do a little bit worse in low elevations where it's a mix of rain and snow domination, and where there's downstream diversions, irrigations, and little is known about diversions and demands. So for example, here in the Bear headwaters, we're usually about 18% error on our March 1st forecasts. Same thing with the Logan, Weber at Oakley. When we're talking about kind of the lower basins like Woodruff Narrows, we're still at 36% mean absolute error. Weber Rockport, still about 25% error there. And down in the Virgin, still about 30% mean absolute error for the historical record here for the last 30 years. And to kind of demonstrate that, I just took last March forecast errors. So last March in the Bear River headwaters, our forecasts were about 14% low, so pretty similar to the 18% there. Barrett Woodruff, we were 33% low there last March, so very comparable to the 36% that we advertise here. So all this information is readily available on our website, so we encourage you to have a good handle on what errors you might expect for our forecasts. And these, of course, are just according to our most probable median forecast here without consideration of the uncertainty that we report as well. Okay, we'll jump right into recent and forecast weather here. So here's our March month-to-date precipitation map as percent of average March 6th precipitation. So you can see that the whole basin's doing really well, except for perhaps some of the Sevier River basins, which are down here at 50 to 90% of normal for the first 6 days in March. So too early to say where it's going to be a good year or a bad year, but we can say a lot of the basins have had really good starts to March, with a lot of the areas seeing 200% of normal precipitation for March's start. On the top here, you can see snapshots of daily precipitation. So the March 1st and 2nd came in with really good precipitation, especially down here in the Virgin and Sevier River headwaters. March 5th and 6th had really good Uinta precipitation all the way up through the Bear River Range and Wasatch Front. So down here, you can see change in our model snow water equivalent with respect to our 1991 to 2020 median. So you can see in the Duchesne, for example, on March 1st, we had 157% of normal, and by March 6th, we were already up to 168% of median snowpack for that basin. So we saw an 11% increase just in that first 6 days of March in the Duchesne, pretty comparable in the Price San Rafael, lower green area, and then modest increases in the Virgin and the Bear River Basin. Weber had an 8% increase, Provo, Utah Lake with a big 13% increase just in that first 6 days of March, and the Sevier losing a little bit, as you can see with that kind of orange and warmer colors there. Okay, into upcoming weather and weather forecasts. This is an image from the Weather Prediction Center depicting March 7 to 14th precipitation outlook. California getting walloped, but more importantly, in Utah here, you can see some high elevation areas getting over 2 inches in the forecasts. We'll have 2 shortwave troughs move through Utah this week on Wednesday, Thursday, and then followed by another one on Friday and Saturday. There's potential for an inland penetrating atmospheric river in the Friday through Saturday trough, which is good news for high precipitation amounts. Once again, the highest 7-day precipitation totals across Utah are 1 to 2% in high elevations. Followed by, after that time, it looks like we'll have some ridging take place starting next week, which means a break in precipitation and some warming temperatures. Okay, looking out a little bit farther, upcoming weather for March 14th to 21st, we'll have another period of troughing over the western United States. We'll have some strong westerly flow that'll allow for troughs to move across the region, have higher moisture contents, but there's a high uncertainty in the precipitation amounts and locations as the ensembles vary on the trough depths and timing. So just as a quick example, this is 2 model runs for the exact same period of time, both March 16th, and you can see the top one has kind of not so deep a trough nor as strong of a low to the south here, whereas this next one, the trough cuts a little bit deeper and we have a little bit stronger of a low down here across Arizona and southwest Utah. So just an example of how model run to model run can vary when we're talking about weather this far out. This is the Climate Prediction Center figures for March 14th to 20th, so very similar time as the previous figure, and we can see elevated odds of above average precipitation across the Colorado River Basin and Utah, and slightly elevated odds of below average temperatures across Utah here. So good news for precipitation and below normal temperatures to preserve that snowpack. So in summary, we've had much above average water year precipitation across Utah. The current snowpack is much above average across Utah. So following that, water supply forecasts are above to much above average across Utah, with slight declines in the Uinta headwaters for water supply forecasts. Early March precipitation has been looking really good in most of our basins, so above average first week of March, and the March weather forecasts through the 21st are active as well. So this concludes our water supply briefing for Utah for March 1st. The next one will be Friday, April 7th. We'll have peak flow forecast webinar Monday, March 20th. So tune into that to get an idea of what our peak flow forecasts are looking like this year. On our website, the March 1st kind of peak flow forecasts, we should have that out later today or early tomorrow. We're aiming for later today if you guys are anxiously awaiting those. And with that, we'll just end with basin focal points, contact information, and links to our website and how to get a hold of us when you need to. Please contact us with questions or comments or how I can make the water supply briefings more relevant to what you do, and thanks for showing up. So now's a good time for any questions that you might have. We can unmute you if you put a hand up, or maybe you can even unmute yourself. Feel free to type things into the webinar here. Tracy, you have a question. And
So it seems like there's a lot of flooding that might occur in the cities. Is that true? Based on the numbers?
good question. Are you talking about short term with this with rain snow elevation lines coming in for this first storm system this
No,
weekend?
you can answer it however you want. I mean,
Okay.
I'm just worried about my watersheds, but I'm also worried about, the banks of the Virgin River, the houses down there falling in.
Sure. Good question as always. It all depends, of course, is the answer.
Yep.
It all depends on how it comes off, right? If we have continued cold temperatures that hold low elevation snow or even high elevation snow into May and June, and then it warms up quickly, that's all going to run off and probably cause problems. So we've seen years where we've had problems with this large snowpack and large low elevation snowpack.
Yep.
And we've also seen really great years where it warms up a little bit and you have a pulse come through and then it cools down and warms up again and cools down. But we are keeping a close eye on it. We'll be updating our peak flow forecasts twice a month. And for specifics, yeah, please get a hold of us and we can dig deeper into what's happened in the past and compare that to weather forecasts and things like that.
Thank you.
Sure thing, Tracy. Thank you. We have any other questions out there? All right, well, thanks everybody for attending. And I am assuming that you know how to get a hold of us when you have questions and comments. I'm assuming that you understand the figures that I present here. And if you don't, please feel free to get a hold of me. I'd love to go through them and explain them so that maybe you can use them more for planning and decision making. And with that, I thank you very much for your attendance.